What's going down, everybody? Stephen here, Command Center Wargaming. Fantastic. So today we're going to start our contrast painting tutorials, and this is part one of the tutorial, and it's how to prepare and base for contrast metallic looks. Alright, and so basically what we're going to be looking at today is we're going to be going through and having a look at how to get the models prepped, how to base them, how to prime them, how to add the silver metallic undercoat for the zenithal appearance of the contrast, and it's pretty fantastic. And yeah, I'll see you in the video, everybody. Fantastic, awesome. Subscribe if you can. Alright, brothers, fantastic. So let's get this party started. The first step I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm just going to airbrush all these guys with a MIG black primer, okay? One-shot MIG black primer. Now, I use one-shot MIG black primer, and here's a trade secret of mine. I actually mix it with Vallejo Negro gloss, right? So even when I'm not doing metallics, I'll basically go through and I'll do a mix of a 50-50 Negro black gloss Vallejo and a MIG one-shot black. Now, the reason is I always like my base coats to have a little bit of gloss, because it really helps the armor to have like a natural, sort of like a natural sheen that comes out. And if you don't like it, that's fine, because all you got to do then is when you matte varnish it later, then you basically can just bring that sheen down. But what it does, you know, it gives you that control. So it's a lot better to start off with as much sheen as you can, as much specular as you can, than what it is to start off with matte and then bring it up. Because you can use sort of like other varnishes and things like that. I use Vallejo metal varnishes, gloss varnishes, things like that, to turn them, you know, matte surfaces to shiny surfaces. However, you're never going to get the same result, you know, from that raw sort of refraction that you'll get from a metallic paint and then going over it and things like that. And despite what some people say, you know, even with a matte paint, just like with white primers and black primers, you know, it will slightly affect the overall color of the base. Same can be said for the actual glossiness and the specular of your models. Now, a lot of people, I think they kind of miss that. They basically think, oh, okay, as long as I just use Blood Angels red or Ultramarines blue, then, you know, like, it's all good and it's going to be great. And it actually sort of doesn't quite work like that. With a darker color, you know, with darker colors like black and things like that, the darker you go on the spectrum, the less that's going to matter. But when you get to colors like red and things like that, or even yellows, or, you know, I mean, yellows won't even come out properly at all if you've got a black base, right? Because it's too strong. But basically, like, you know, depending on the contrast of your color, basically, you know, it will yield drastically different results. You know, so like, you know, darker undercoats, if you use like a gray undercoat, gray primer, or you use a white primer and you go over that with Mephiston red, you're going to get, you know, quite a different red underneath that. Now, a lot of people also, they like to undercoat in gray, right? They like to go halfway on that. They like to undercoat in gray. What I do is when I do grays, I use a 50-50 mix of MIG one-shot primer, black, and then 50% of MIG one-shot white, which I don't have on me right now because I just cleaned the booth up a bit. But essentially that's what I do. Now, why do I use MIG primer? Why do I use MIG primer? Why don't I use Games Workshop primer? Why don't I like to use straight Vallejo primer, etc.? Well, straight Vallejo primer is really good. Games Workshop primer is absolute shit. You know, like, I will do another video in another time, basically showing you the difference of you know, Abaddon black from the can, basically compared to MIG one-shot primer. And the reason is because, I mean, considering we're airbrushing those, right, it's going to be the same kind of thing. Why I use this primer, all right, it's not to try to be a hero, okay? Everything I do, or an elitist or whatever, Everything I do is for a reason. The reason is MIG one-shot primer is actually very, very thin and it's very consistent. But what it does, it actually wraps around your model and shrink wraps around your model, which actually preserves the details of the miniatures. Now, in my opinion, that's pretty important. All right, that's pretty important to me. That's just me though. If you like having, do you love me, brother, 6 coats of paint or whatever on your Marines and having them look like ass, then that's your prerogative. That's absolutely fine by me, right? But my prerogative isn't to, sit in my safe space and basically, tell me my model looks good, please, Daddy G Dubs. It's basically, look, I want my stuff looking as best I can. I spend good money on these Citadel miniatures, and my philosophy is I want them looking as best I can get on the table. And I'm always, and I'm my own worst critic, I'm always looking for ways to improve myself. All right, anybody who's following my channel will know that I will sit there and research and ask questions, and there are a lot other better painters than me, 100% there are. But at the end of the day, yeah, that's why I use the MIG one-shot. Right, and that's basically because it shrinks around the model. Okay, now I've actually pre-mixed this into this bottle. Right, so what I've done is I've taken the lid off and I've pre-mixed it. I'm just going to turn my compressor on. Just for 1 second here. Just get to that. Yeah, there we go. All right. So yeah, so basically, yeah, that's why I do it. I pre-mix it in here. And what that allows me to do is basically get a little bit of a sheen to it, which is pretty fantastic as well. Now, for this, I will be using a glove for my left hand. And that's not because I need to with this paint. It's acrylic, it's fairly safe. But it's basically just because I don't want crap all over my hand, because I've got to take my fiance out later. And that's all good. And plus, some pretty epic news too is that I just got a message from the post office, and apparently I've got some mail there, some packages. So that may be my Fire Raptor gunship. That would be so awesome. I'll be doing that, going pretty hard with that over the weekend as well, which is going to be epic. All right, fantastic. Yeah, so I'm just going to give this a bit of a shake. I've already pre-shaked it a little bit, it's all good. Now, yeah, as I said, this MIG one-shot, it's pretty epic. It works really, really well, just like out of the bottle as well. You don't have to do much thinning or anything like that for it. By the way, just in case I don't mention it in the video I shoot before this, so these Marines over here, they're actually just failed Alpha Legion projects that I basically did before, which I'm just painting over, okay? So yeah, so what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna hold the model up, okay? Now, only Adonis asked me, said, oh, Steve, should I be taking these bases off and all that kind of stuff? Yes, you can. I do it sometimes. It depends on the model. Obviously, I'm not too concerned about these models because it's just contrast, okay? I'm not gonna be using any of these in my overall armies, but yes, for sure, you can take them off the base, have them off the base, have them hooked up on corkscrews or with little wires or like whatever staging you like to do. I'll do another video on the staging, all right? But yeah. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go set my airbrush up to about maybe 20 psi and just have a little bit in my cup there, not too much, right? Just a little bit, because if my consistency is wrong, I might want to take some out, okay? And I'm just going to go through. I'm just going to hold my airbrush down and just pump airbrush through it and pull back the slightest amount, right, till I get to about that consistency right there, all right? Now, the reason I'm doing that is because it's very important to airbrush on in very thin coats, all right? So that way, again, we don't want to lose that awesome detail of the miniature, right? So I'm going to come in and test my distance, right? With the Games Workshop paints, yes, you have to spray back from like, Mars, because the paint is so, thick that you have to do that. But with these MIG ones, they're really good too, because of the epic consistency and because they shrink wrap so well, right? I'm able to basically come in here, right, and just get a bit close to it as well, all right? And you can see here, right, very, very slowly, very, very, very slowly, how nicely it comes out how evenly this undercoat comes out. All right. And, you know, I'm not too concerned about, you know, touching the model right now. I mean, you shouldn't, but I could just paint over it right now. But the thing is that it's a bit hard to do it while I'm doing it on the camera. So I'm just trying to focus on getting the modeling. So you notice what I'm doing with my airbrush as well. All right, I'm going around in little circles as I'm doing it. So this is so the paint distributes evenly, right? And what you want to do is once you get to about that point, you just want to stop, and we want to let that dry for a little while. All right, trying not to touch the model. And just before I do that, like I will be going over this again in another coat, okay? But what you should be able to see there on the model is basically that there's this nice sort of finish on it, this not quite a gloss, but this sort of satin finish. And like I said, if you don't like that satin finish, then that's fine. But it just, you know, you can always bring that back later, like down. You know what I mean? But you're not, you know, but if you want to keep it sort of like shiny, I like my Marines to be actually pretty shiny because, you know, in the fluff, they always look after their armor and stuff. Then you could go through and do that. Now I am noticing because of the Vallejo mix in here, it is coming out a little bit thicker, so I'm pulling my brush back, all right, just a little bit more, right? That's the Vallejo Negro gloss, all right, coming out, and still not a drama at all because it's still hugging to the model really, really, really nicely, and you can see all the epic details coming out. All right, still, and it's not clogging up my model, coming out too thick. All right, which is absolutely fantastic. All right, and just go through here again and just do this. So look, if you don't want to look, I'm probably not going to record me like undercoating all these guys. I'm pretty sure you get the message by now. So I was going to keep just recording it and then just, you know, set like a time code up on the video where you could then just jump to it. But yeah, you can just skip ahead in the video, I think, because there might be some people who might want to see it. Now I just ran out of one shot, but that's okay. So I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to give myself a little bit more one shot there. That paint is a little bit clogged up there on the nozzle, but that's all right. Just make sure I didn't get any on the floor. I probably did. I got it on my arm, but that's all right. That's because that's why we have gloves. But anyway, all good. So let's continue just spraying this up. All right, that's one thing with the MIG paints. They can get a little bit. The nozzles can dry up a little bit like that. So just so you know for next time, and I'm not going to edit that out. And the reason is why I'm not going to edit that out is because, you know, you can learn by my mistakes, right? So if I edited that out, I'm not really teaching you anything, am I? So, you know, it's all good. I had some guy comment on one of the videos before, basically saying to me that I put crap on amateurs and all this kind of stuff and all this kind of stuff. I was like, mate, look, I don't do that. I make mistakes too. But, you know, if we don't sort of learn by our mistakes, then we're never gonna progress. You know, and that's the whole thing. You know, like basically, that's how I learned how to paint minis, and it's basically by, you know, a few years worth of learning. I mean, I have been painting miniatures for a long time, but you know, a lot of it's been learnt from learning from other people. You know, learning from other YouTubers. You know, learning from my own trial and error, learning from my own research, all right, things like that. So here they go, all right, and one more. This is actually a contrast from before, all right, but he's on his way out now, and we're going to redo him because for the tutorial. I'm not sure how many of these guys we actually need to do these tutorials, but I want to try to get a few done. And it should be good, so I'm just going to go through and just give that one a little bit more black because, you know, the paint's a little bit thicker on him, but as you can see, like, you know, this undercoat isn't really going through and affecting much. Now here are one of my plasma fuel dudes, so I'm just going to go over there. Plasma fuel is wicked, but even still, it's you know, I'm happy with the Alpha Legion scheme as what I've got it, so it's pretty cool. So I'm just going around here like that and just getting this miniature sort of done. Right, so there we go. Around and around we go. Okay, so once that's done, we can go through now. I can grab these guys that I started undercoating before, and I could start just going around them ever so slightly, just to give them like another one off. Okay, so all right, I'm just going to hit them from the top first. Okay, I could just go back to these, you know, that's okay. All right, so just get them done just a little bit from the top. Then I'm just going to come down and just run in here from the bottom. Very lightly at this point, because most of it's already been covered up, right? And just underneath the backpacks and basically everything that we've sort of missed there. So, you know, it is important that we have a very nice undercoat of black, and the reason is so the silver we're going to put on top of this is going to be is going to need this black to sort of like pop out a little bit. Now, ideally, you know, I would actually not be using this black if I wanted like a massive chrome finish. I'd be using other paints for that, but that'll be in another video. All right, so just making sure, just grabbing it. I'm grabbing it by the gun or grabbing it by the base, because the reason is like, you know, the gun I could kind of get away with losing some, you know, if I put some fingerprints on it there. It's not ideal, but, you know, but it's not going to kill me if I do that, because the gun's like metallic anyway. So you can see here I'm going through here like that, and it's all good. All right, and like running out of paint there, but that's okay. I'm going to leave that there. I'm probably not even going to use him anyway for that part, but all good. Now what I'll do now, I'm going to let these guys dry for like about maybe 10 minutes. Really, you should be allowing an hour, all right? So what you should be doing, I'm just doing this tutorial, and I'm fairly confident in my abilities to work around it, but you really should be allowing these guys 1 hour to dry. Now, what I do, this is kind of another technique of mine that I'll use as I'm going through and undercoating these guys. I'll go through, and I've just got this sort of tub here. It's got some metho in it, okay, and methylated spirits. And what I do as I'm waiting, in order to clean my brush, I'll just get some of that, all right, and just flush a little bit of metho just through the feed, right? Just so it just sort of gets it a little bit out of there. Make sure you're very well ventilated when you do this. Wear your gas masks and stuff, safety first, just so it doesn't block out. Then I'm going to pour it out in here, and I'm going to disconnect my airbrush. Right, there might be a little bit of air here, so just be careful. Right, and then I'm just going to grab it. I'm just going to just drop that in the metho, right, and put the lid on it, because you can actually reuse this stuff. And when I come back in about 10-15 minutes, in your case, that would be 1 hour, then that airbrush is going to be a lot easier to clean than whether I just sat there and chalking it up and, you know, doing things like that. And you know, yeah. And that's, again, this is why we use the glove, all right? So these are just sort of, they're like surgical gloves. You can buy them at like any supermarket, really. They cost a couple of dollars for a pack of like 100 of them. And unfortunately, I should have had my sleeve rolled down, but that's okay. This is very safe acrylic paint, so I can just wash that off. And because it's so thin, because the paint is so thin, this MIG primer is so thin, it allows us, you know, to go over this model a few times as well. So even if we make mistakes, it's very hard to lose the detail. But yeah, so okay, so this is still, we're still priming the models, right? In our little contrast tutorial, I'm just going to chuck that glove out. It's like Michael Jackson in his one glove. But next up, like I said, we'll now go through, let this dry for a bit, and then I'll go through and I'll add the silver next. And I think what I'm going to use, I'm going to use some chrome from Vallejo. Now, I don't usually use this paint, chrome from Vallejo. I usually use other stuff, okay? I usually use MIG, but because I know a lot of you are using this paint, use Vallejo and stuff like that, then I'm going to use this. I might even then go over into some Vallejo metal color, because I have heard that this MIG paint can be a little bit not as accessible for a lot of people. So I want to try it. And as I said, look, it's contrast, everybody. In my opinion, it's not going to look that spectacular anyway, compared to other things. I'm not going to run him in my army, but I'm doing the tutorial basically for those of you who do like it and who do want to see the stuff look decent. And yeah, chrome from Vallejo or silver for Vallejo are your go-tos, model airs. There's also chainmail if you want to go a little bit crazy. Underneath the model, we could basically spray that underneath the model. We might do that actually. I'll do that with you. Basically just to have a look and get the shadows from underneath. Okay, so but we'll go through that in the next section. I'm going to stop the camera and then we'll go through and start the overall process of the second undercoat. Cool. All right, guys, what's going down? Steve here. We're back once again. And I've just basically had to turn my ventilation system on because it's just getting a little bit musty in here with the paint. So generally I wouldn't really, it's not essential with acrylic paints, but yeah, it's I might want to do that, and I don't want to put my breather on because it's going to muffle up my voice. But anyway, so by this time you should have waited an hour, right? In your case, 1 hour. In my case, 10 minutes for your Marines to be undercoated, all right? And I'd just like to point out as well how nicely these are undercoated, all right? And how much detail they basically keep on the original model. And these models have literally been worked over about 10 times now without stripping them. And the reason is because of the MIG paint. Right, so you can see there's a little bit of residual stuff from underneath, but you know, whatever. That's just, you know, we're going to be going over that silver anyway, so who cares? All right, fantastic, everybody. So let's continue the tutorial. I'm just going to grab my my lunchbox here with my airbrush that I've just had soaking in methylated spirits for a few minutes there. All right, and I'm just going to keep a little bit of metho in my cup there, and I'm going to use this to just flush the airbrush out a bit. It's just basically just going to clean it up for me as I'm going. Just helps to keep my airbrush clean and that. Once again, try not to breathe that stuff in too much. It is pure alcohol, so it's not good for your lungs. But at the same time, if you do it carefully, you can really increase your workflow. Give it a bit of a twirl. Get a little old brush or something. You can see I have hidden behind here. And you just see like how easily this just cleans up. Like you just get all that black paint just off there. All right, just, you know, push it through. Undo your back centerpiece as well. Let it drip out. Clean your pin or your stylus or whatever you want to call them. Okay, and I go through there. And then once that's, so just give it a flush out. Just give it a flush out. I'm just flushing mine out up the back there. Just be careful not to get it on your models, and just flush the residual methylated spirits out like that. Okay. Make sure your windows are open, everybody. Make sure you're painting your airbrush away from you. Look the other way if you have to while you're doing this. All right, and this will just ensure that you have a really nice clean chamber for when you're going to airbrush before. You can grab it by the tip and just sort of just do that. You can see there's just a bit of gunk on my tip there. All right, so I want that off. All right, there we go, nice and clean. Right, or clean enough for us at the moment, right? So I'm only worried about the inside there, not the outside. That's something I have to clean on top. All right, fantastic. So let's continue. I just got a message on my phone as well that I got 2 parcels. So one I think is some Accolade 2 paint, and one I'm hoping is a fire wrapper. So I'm really excited about that. And so let's go ahead and put this silver on. Now the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go through, and I like to do the bottom first because that way we can go over the top. We're going to use some Vallejo Game Model Air, right, which is Plater Silver, all right, and we're gonna, or silver plate, and we're just gonna basically put it down underneath here. All right, Now this does come out pretty thick, right? So just got to push it in there like that. Okay. I thought that was chainmail silver, but that's okay. I must have grabbed the wrong paint before. No harm done. With this contrast stuff, it's not going to matter anyway. So, but I will put a little bit of underneath it so that it's got some natural sort of zenithal highlighting and things like that. Now what I'm doing, I'm using this isocol here, and I'm just going to drop this. This is how I thin my paint. I thin my paint with isocol. It's really cheap. You buy it from the chemist, and it's really accessible. All right, I'm just putting a 50-50 mix into my cup here and stirring it around. Right, till you get sort of like this milky consistency. That's probably a little bit too thin for what I'm trying to do here, so I'll just add like a little bit more into my cup. So maybe about that, okay? And just go around like that. Now, what I really like to use, but it's a lot more expensive, is Tamiya. So Tamiya X20A thinner. That's the thinner that I use to thin my acrylics. But it's, you know, it's not hard to come by, and it's pretty cheap compared to like Citadel stuff or Vallejo stuff. But it's just, I don't know, I like to save it for my Tamiya paints, because there's some Tamiya paints which you really need to thin with that, or they don't come out quite as well. And now you can see we have this sort of like more silvery plate sort of mix in there, and you can see my consistency there, sort of like rocking in the bowl, kind of like this milky sort of consistency, not quite water, but yeah. So as Only Adonis was saying, yeah, we can take these guys off if you want, right? And to do it properly, I'll show you how to do it properly. Just grab them from there and just come in from underneath the model, right? And just spray from down and up, right? So I don't know if you could see that, but I'm spraying the exact same technique as before, everybody. Right, the exact same stuff, right? And I'm just spraying from down up, and you can see, right? So you can see what's happening here. I'm just getting this sort of like undercoat here of the silver underneath, like underneath the arms, underneath the torso, all that kind of stuff. Okay, which is really cool. And then I'm going to come underneath the model again, right? I'm just going to start going underneath it. Right, and just spraying underneath it like that, okay, so from directly down. Alright, and we get like a really nice sort of like undercoat here, alright, under the model. Alright, so it's really cool, really fantastic, okay? So just get that down like that. Right, nice and thin, everybody. I always airbrush thin. You can always thicken it up later, remember? Right, don't forget to get the sides as well. Right, I'm going 90 degrees up the model, right? So like, it's hard for me to show you, but so up the model 90 degrees like that, okay? So right from 90 degrees underneath. All right, when we will do a 45 later, right? But we'll do the 45 with the Vallejo silver on the top. Might actually help if I do that on camera, mightn't it? Right, so there we go, just spray that up there like that. All good, fantastic, right? Now I'm not going to do that for every single model. Right, we'll just go through and we'll just do it for a couple. Alright, just come back in here now and just get this in here, because there's a bit of a thicker paint. It's coming out a little bit thicker. Alright, but that's okay. Just start smashing your airbrush like that. It's all good. Right, and you can see here, that's what we're getting. Now, you probably won't even see much of what's going on the top. And that's basically because the model is basically going to be brushed up from the front anyway. Okay, so all good. So that's the way we do it. If I want to go through and have him like sort of separate like that. For me though, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to do this on the base. Okay, so fantastic. So here we go. It's going to come in underneath the model. Right, just sort of underneath it there. This time I'm not taking it off the base. And as you can see, it's basically just like going underneath it like that. Alright, so just slowly, just very slowly but carefully putting it on. Alright, layers, layers, layers. Don't go on too thick with it. Alright, it's just to get that bottom section. Alright, you can see here it starts to seep up into the top a little bit. That's alright, and if you want, you could go on a 45 a little bit as well. But like I said, don't go too crazy because this is where our actual silver's going to come in or up over the top. Alright, so just come in, get a little bit more on that one, over the top. A little bit more on that one. Right, you can see how I'm doing that, but the top remains pretty much black. Right, and down on this one as well, so just come in there and hit that like there. So I've just increased the air pressure on my airbrush as well. So I'm just coming back a little bit like that. But anyway, okay, fantastic. So once you've done that, you go through, go get yourself some chrome. Get yourself some chrome. Right, Model Air Chrome Metallic from Vallejo. You can use silver, whatever it is you want. I'm going to use chrome for this example. Put some in the airbrush, alright, and once again, we just want to thin this guy really, really slightly with some thinner. Not 50-50 this time, because it's already air paint, but we want maybe 25% thin. Right, come in there with your brush, make sure it's not contaminated, give it a bit of a stir. Alright, and then we're going to get, once again, we're going to have our consistency. Right, stir that up. Okay, and these guys can just pee off over here and I'll just use them. Right, this will be enough. There'll be like an Alpha Legion, an Ultramarine, and a Blood Angel or something like that, okay? And this part's very easy. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in from the top of the model. I might hold this. Right, I could keep it on the base. Right, and I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to spray from the top down. Right, just from the very top down, very lightly. Right, and then I'm going to put that down and I'm going to let that just dry for a little bit over here. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to do the same to this guy. Right, you can see how nice and smooth that sort of starts to build up. Alright, and then come down like that, okay, on top of the model like that. Just come back here, do a little bit of that as well. And then we want to go and grab this guy and just sort of like get it like that from the top as well, okay? Once we've done the top, then we go through and like you can let it dry for a little bit if you want. But what I'll do is I'll just keep working with it. I might just readjust this camera just ever so slightly. Right, there we go, and I might zoom in just a little bit as well. And I'm going to come in now, and I'm just going to come in and come from 45 degrees down. Very thin, just turning the model by the base, very thin. The paint will build up, alright, so don't worry about it. And I'm coming in from 45 degrees down, so kind of like down like that. Just so I'm hitting like the sort of like the top bottom of the armor, but I'm leaving sort of like shadowed areas, right? So if you see in here, I've got some shadowed areas, but I'm basically coming in from the top, so as if the light was hitting it for real, it's coming down like that, right? And that'll pretty much do for that section. We'll just let it dry for a bit. I'm going to do the same thing for this, just coming down from a top down. Let me just go a little bit out further on this, just so you can get a little bit more of my airbrush, see what I'm doing. Alright, so you can see I'm turning it like that. Usually I'll be using this wheel, but because as I said, I'm operating the camera, basically, yeah, it's a lot different doing it on camera than sort of like in real life, because you've got to sort of think about, you got to multitask a little bit, you know. So I have a lot of respect, you know, for YouTubers who do painting tutorials, because yeah, it's not quite the same as just painting it. So you can see here that there we go. So that's what we got, right? And you can see here how I've got my darker areas, my really nice zenithal highlights just sitting there like that. Okay, that's fantastic. And now I've just kicked my models off the table somewhere. I've got no idea where they went, but all good. One's here, and I've got a little bit of extra paint, so I'm just going to go through and give that a bit of a touch up there. Right, so chrome's very good because what chrome does, chrome gives the model sort of like a natural white finish, whereby a lot of the other silvers, they might come up a little bit darker in contrast, in color, whereas chrome will come up white, and it will help the help to preserve the original color as well, as opposed to being tinted by something else. So yeah, what I might do though, I will go through and I'm just gonna do just a touch of silver, straight silver, on the very tops of the model, right, and on the feet and everything, just basically to help to bring that. It's very, very, very subtle, everybody. So I'll show you how I do it. Okay. I found him. He's in pieces on the ground. That's all right. These are just tests. These are crash test Marines anyway, so we don't care about them. They come from the Conquest box. So yeah, and basically what we're going to do, I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to go one shot on the shoulder pads, really lightly, and on the other shoulder pad, really lightly. And you could probably see now on the camera, that's helped to sort of buff that up like quite substantially now. All right, so it's really shiny now, really nice. Then what I'll do is I'll come off, do a one shot on the feet, right? Maybe just up the top here, just very lightly, like I'm barely even pressing it, right? And this is going to help me to get my metallic sort of look, right? And you can see here it's coming up, right? Now this is the same process I use for basing models for metallics and things like that. For my Alpha Legion, so it's the same base coating techniques. Well, it's not the same actually, but it's pretty similar. All right, and you can see here I'm just bringing this up just on the very tips where the light would be hitting. All right, and there we go. So yeah, there we go. There's the thing. I'll see if I can just put Humpty Dumpty back together again really quick, because it would be nice to have three of them. I've lost his head somewhere. I don't know where that's gone. And you can see, actually this is quite good because now you can see the difference. You can see the difference in the contrast color tones between this metallic and that metallic, right? You can see that's a lot lighter, a lot shinier. But as I go through and is that his head? It would be nice to have his head on it, but I don't really care. No. Yeah, wait, I've got it. I found his head. So I'm just gonna give Humpty Dumpty his head. There he goes. Get in there. Nah, it's not gonna work. Okay, stuff it. It's just, yeah, cool. It's only contrast anyway, right? So we'll get that in there like that. Right, and then we're just going to go through and just buff that up a bit. You can see that silver sort of coming out. You can see I'm just tapping it in just on the very most highlights of the model. Right, so you watch my brush control, right, and see as I'm going. And then you pretend that guy's got a head, and then, you know, voila. You can see I've got that really nice sort of shadowing there, which is really cool. Alright, fantastic. So I've got a tiny little bit more in there. I'll just go through and I'll just, why waste the paint? So I'll just come up from very high up, very, very high up, and just give it a nice sort of easy coat of Vallejo Silver. Alright, and that'll be good. Now, I won't bother flushing out my things with Methos, so I'll just get some Isocol, just get it in there, give it a bit of a swash around, and spray it. Clear the chamber, right? Just give it a dash, give it a dab, right? You can see my exhaust fans are just pumping out. All right, so there we go. This is the preparation. This is the preparation for the contrast paint tutorial. And I think what I might do is I might actually leave this here, and I might turn this into a tutorial. and then we'll do the next section, like the actual sort of base coating and stuff like that, and then move it forward. And what I'll do is I'll glue this guy's head on, because it kind of looks a little bit bodgy. Actually, I'll do that right now. I'll just get some Revel and whack that on here, and it's just put that on there like that. Bit of glue, and what I'll do is I'll start not distributing. What do you call it? Start getting this video rendered in the edit, and run over to the post office and see if I can't grab these packages, which I think might be my Fire Raptor. Fire Raptor gunship. So yeah, so it should be pretty cool. Can I get this head in? Awesome. So I got his head in. I just put the backpack back on now. There we go. There we go. I might just get a little bit of glue on this guy just quickly. Alright, just so I can get him in there like that. Alright, fantastic. Cool. Alright, so there we go. And as you can see, I just manhandled these minis. And they're fine. There's no finger marks, nothing like that. Because they've this paint dries really quick, and because of my primer, my MIG one-shot primer, I was able to basically, and a very thin coats of silver undercoat, I was able to basically go through and have them primed up, really quick and ready really quickly. All right, everybody. So this will be it for the undercoat tutorial. The undercoat tutorial for contrast paints. Metallic contrast paints, and I'll catch us in the next video where I'll go through and base them up and put the actual contrast paint on them and all that kind of stuff. It'll be epic. All right.